In the far reaches of the galaxy, where countless planets existed under the oppressive rule of merciless empires, humanity had carved its own path as independent settlers and traders. Among these settlers was a man named Jack Tanner, a skilled mechanic with a reputation for fixing anything that had a motor. He was a solitary figure, a man who had known the rough and unforgiving life of a mechanic's apprentice and later, a solo operator who worked in the depths of space. His work had earned him respect among his peers, but his heart was always focused on surviving, not thriving. One cold, dreary day, while making repairs to his ship on the industrial planet of Kretos IV, Jack encountered a scene that would change his life forever. Kretos IV was a mining colony, home to a number of laborers, humans and aliens alike, who worked under grueling conditions for little pay. The planet's rulers, a powerful and cruel corporation called Rax Corp, made their fortune off the backs of the workers. Among them were slaves, beings who were captured, sold, and forced into hard labor. Most of them were alien women, treated as mere objects to be bought and sold in an unforgiving economy. Jack had seen them before, the discarded bodies of those who could no longer serve their purpose. But that day it was different. He was walking to his ship when he heard a commotion in the alleyway behind a decrepit building. Curiosity piqued. Jack ventured closer. What he saw made his blood run cold. A group of men from the Rax Corp were unloading a cargo ship. As they threw away crates and discarded the worthless goods, they dragged an alien woman from the ship, her body bruised and bloodied. Her eyes, full of fear and pain, met Jack's. But there was something more in her eyes, defiance. The woman was thrown to the ground like a sack of discarded trash. Her captors laughed, making cruel remarks about her worthlessness. Another one who couldn't work fast enough? Trash, one of the men sneered. Jack's gut twisted with disgust. He had seen the suffering of these slaves before, but this one, it felt personal. He couldn't ignore it. Without thinking, Jack stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Hey," he shouted. The men turned to face him. "Got a problem, mechanic?" One of the men sneered, pulling out a blaster. "You're not allowed to interfere with Rax Corp business." "I don't care who you work for," Jack said firmly. "You're not leaving this woman here to die." For a moment, there was silence. The men seemed to size him up, but before they could act, Jack lunged forward. A quick flick of his hand, a well-placed jab, and the blaster was knocked from the man's hand. With the other hand, Jack grabbed the woman's wrist, pulling her up from the ground. The men hesitated, clearly unsure whether to retaliate or flee. But Jack wasn't waiting around for them to decide. He ran, pulling the alien woman along behind him, toward his ship. Once aboard his ship, Jack quickly locked the doors and guided the woman to the med bay. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. It was clear she had been through a great deal of suffering. "Easy," Jack said softly, pulling out the medical supplies from his kit. "You're safe now." She looked at him, her alien features softening slightly. She was unlike any creature Jack had seen before. Her skin was a pale greenish blue, her hair long and dark, with a streak of silver that shimmered like liquid mercury. Her eyes, large and expressive, had a haunted look in them, as if they had seen too much for any living being to endure. "You saved me," she whispered weakly, her voice hoarse. "But why?" Jack paused for a moment, working quickly to tend to her injuries. "Because it was the right thing to do," he replied simply. "No one deserves to be treated that way." The woman gazed at him, her eyes searching his face, as though she were trying to understand his motives. "Why? Why would a human help me?" "I'm Jack," he replied. "I'm a mechanic. I was just passing through when I saw you." "I am Ilira," she whispered, her voice quiet and uncertain. "I am nothing." Jack's heart ached as he worked to stabilize her. He had seen the brutality of slavery, But it went beyond anything he could have imagined. Ilira wasn't just a slave. She was a living being, discarded like a tool when no longer useful. "You're not nothing," Jack said firmly. "You're a person, Ilira." Her gaze softened slightly, but her pain was evident. "I was born to serve, to be used. Now I am nothing," she repeated, her voice breaking. Jack looked at her, feeling an unexpected swell of protectiveness. "You're free now. You're not anyone's property." Ilira stared at him, her confusion giving way to a flicker of hope. "Free?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, you're free," Jack said, giving her a reassuring smile. "No one owns you. No one controls you." Over the next few weeks, as Jack tended to her wounds and helped her regain her strength, Ilira began to open up to him. She shared her story, how she had been captured by the Rax Corp when she was just a child, forced into slavery, and used for labor. She had never known freedom, never known kindness, until now. As Jack spent more time with her, he began to see her not as a victim, but as a survivor. Her strength, her resilience, and her fiery spirit captivated him in ways he couldn't understand. What had started as an act of compassion was slowly becoming something more. Jack found himself drawn to her. He didn't just want to protect her. He wanted to care for her. But there was still much to be done. Rax Corp was a powerful organization, and Ilira was far from safe. Jack knew he couldn't just leave her stranded on his ship without risking their lives. He had to find a way to help her escape once and for all. Jack and Ilira spent the next few months on the run, traveling from planet to planet, hiding from the empire that had enslaved her. Jack's skills as a mechanic were invaluable, allowing them to stay one step ahead of Rax Corp's relentless pursuit. As the days passed, Jack's feelings for Ilira deepened. What had started as sympathy had turned into something far stronger. He loved her. One night, as they sat under the stars on a quiet, remote planet, Ilira looked at him and asked the question that had been on her mind. "Why do you help me, Jack?" she asked softly. "I am nothing. I have nothing. I am just a broken thing." Jack reached out, taking her hand in his. "You're not broken," he said gently. "And you're not nothing. You're everything to me." Tears welled in Ilira's eyes, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe it. She leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. In that moment, everything changed. She was no longer a slave. She was no longer defined by her past. She was a woman with a future that Jack had promised to share with her. Years later, Jack and Ilira had built a life together. They had created a new home on a quiet, peaceful planet, far from the reach of Rax Corporation. Ilira, once a broken and discarded slave, had found her voice, her strength, and her freedom. Jack, the mechanic who had once only cared for surviving, had found love in the most unexpected place. Together, they lived their lives on their own terms, free from the oppression of the Empire, and free from the chains that had once bound Ilira. And in the quiet moments, when they sat under the stars, Jack knew that he had done more than save her. He had saved them both.